Right
So the
now,
core challenges, the protests may have ebbed, but they will spark up again in the future because this
Secretary of
regime, unless
State
they are
and
willing to change and or leave,
the guy who has
have no way of
25,000 other
addressing the
jobs in this
legitimate and
administration, Marco
consistent
Rubio,
complaints of the people of Iran who deserve better.
is speaking.
Thank you, Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I think the scope of the project that you are undertaking in Venezuela
Rubio
is without
is
precedent. You are
testifying.
taking their
I'm not
oil
sure
at
which,
gunpoint. You are holding and selling that
committee,
oil, putting for now the receipts
this
in an
is.
offshore Middle Eastern
he's
account. You're
testifying
deciding
about,
how and for what
Venezuela.
purposes that money is going to be used in a country of 30 million people.
And he's just talking.
I think a lot of
He's
us
saying
think
nothing.
that is destined
He's
for
using words,
failure. And I know that you're telling us
and
today
he's
just to
speaking.
be patient. But
So I figured I would
a month
share it with
later,
you.
we have no information on a timetable for a democratic transition. Maduro's
Senator
people
Murphy
are
is
still
speaking
in
with
charge.
him right
Most
now.
of the political prisoners are in jail. And by the way, those that have been let out have a gag order on them from the government. The opposition leader is still in exile. This looks already like it is a failure. You say you're in serious talks, but as you note, the Venezuelans are great at being in serious talks. They almost never deliver. So I'm just going to give you my three questions and hope that you'll answer them because I do think we
Marco,
want
little
to try
Marco,
to
little
understand
Marco.
how to judge
Senator Murphy,
the
let's see
efficacy of this
what you guys.
as
You're not
time
going to
goes
answer
on
it
because
anyway,
I
but
worry
let's see
you won't be
what
back
you
before
can
this
toss
committee
over to him.
anytime soon, and to understand whether
Hey
this
guys,
is
I can see
just
some of you are
facilitating
here, but for some reason you're not popping
both in
up
Venezuela
on my,
and here at home. So here are
on
my
my
three
stream.
questions.
Hopefully you'll come up in a
First,
moment.
reports are that you've given no bid licenses to two companies to sell Venezuela's oil. One of them is a massive donor to the president. To many Americans, that reeks.
Yes.
And so my question is, can you commit that partners for future sales are going to be chosen through a fair, open selection process? Second,
I think I would. Hey, Gamer
Delcy
Vet Dad. Hey, Paul.
Rodriguez, who is an unelected leader, the head of Maduro's torture
Tina,
operation,
how are you?
is still in power 6 months from now. Does that mean that your policy
If you're
is a
just joining
success
us,
or failure? How do
Rubio
we
is
judge
getting
when we've had
Secretary of State
enough
Rubio is
of
getting
Rodriguez?
questioned by a Senate
And
committee
third, in your
about
testimony,
Venezuela.
you reserved the right to
this
use
is
force
Senator Chris
again
Murphy is actually
in the
asking him
future
real questions. Rubio
if
isn't
the Venezuelan
really giving
government
any real
isn't
answers.
complying
He's just kind of
with
watch.
your requests. So if, for instance, they refused to give you access to the oil in the future, if they said, we're just going to keep it for ourselves, would this cause you to consider military action? And do you concede that if you're using military action simply to try to compel cooperation from the government, you absolutely need congressional authorization for that? So if you can answer those three questions.
So the first question was about the trading companies. The second is about Delcy still in power 6 months from now.
6 months from now.
And the third is on the use of force.
Yes.
Okay. On the first one, the two traders. So here's the problem we faced. The problem we faced in the short term is they had no place to put oil. They were running out of storage capacity for their oil. We had to move that oil to market very.
Now remember, this first question that Rubio has been asked is basically why did Trump's friends, his billionaire friends, get these huge contracts when it has to do with Venezuelan oil? Why wasn't this put up for bids? Why is it Trump's cronies? That's the first question. And watch Rubio not answer this question.
The only way to move it to market very quickly is to plug into these two primary trade companies that could sell it in the open market. That is not the permanent outcome here. That is.
So these two trade companies, let's just unpack Rubio's bullshit as he says it. So these two trade companies, these two primary trade companies are the only ones that could do this. They're the only ones that could deal with the oil, and they just happen to be huge donors to the village idiot Donald Trump and the village idiot Donald Trump's friends. Fuck you, Marco, but let's let him continue.
Short-term fix to a short-term problem, which is they were literally storing oil. They brought in tankers and had tankers sitting offshore just to hold their oil. At some point, their capacity to produce was going to be shut down and their ability to generate revenue. So we had to move that oil very quickly. The long-term plan is not those two trading.
So the oil had to be moved very quickly, even though that oil has been sitting around for 15 years, right? Even though the oil has been somewhere for it had to go very quickly. We had to do it, right, little Marco? Little Marco, right? They had to move the oil very quickly. Mark Rubio talks very fast and he speaks intelligently, so he doesn't sound like a dumb fuck like the idiot. So you got to slow him down and unpack his bullshit. I don't know if Murphy's going to let him get away with it, but slow him down, unpack his bullshit, right? And then and then kind of make sense of the bullshit that he's telling us. So there were only magically two companies that could handle the oil in America, and they were both big donors to the village idiot Donald Trump, right? And the oil that's been sitting around for years and years had to get out right away. It needed to get out immediately. Let's continue, little Marco.
The long-term plan is for them to have a normal energy program that sells directly into the market, directly to refineries and to companies that are exploiting and exploring it. For example, Chevron has operations there that never stopped. They seek to expand those operations. They don't need those trading companies. So those trading companies were a short-term fix for.
So it's a short-term fix. Chevron couldn't have gone in there. It's not that Chevron doesn't want to go in there. It's not that oil professionals, including those from Chevron, said publicly that they cannot just go in there. They're not going to invest billions and billions of dollars to go in there. Marco was lying. Just saying.
Very acute problem because we wanted to prevent societal collapse because they had no money for revenue.
There was no risk of societal collapse. Even before, they were in terrible shape, Venezuela. They were dealing with hyperinflation. The economy was a mess. Maduro was a fucking maniac, dictatorial asshole, smarter than the moron we have. But like Venezuela, like Argentina, like Turkey at one point, although Turkey seems to have stabilized a little bit, they were in a lot of economic trouble, turmoil, but they weren't by any means on the brink of economic collapse. Marco again is lying. They weren't on the brink of economic collapse. Venezuela or Argentina was on the brink of economic collapse, and we, to the tune of $40 billion, probably more that we're not even hearing about, we bailed them out. Marco is lying. Again.
Second point about her being still in power. Look, let me say this, a couple things.
All right, so this is in reference to the second question that Senator Chris Murphy asked. He said, look, we have this vice president of a dictatorship, the cruel, evil dictator who you guys removed in the middle of the night, and his wife, and they're in New York on trial right now. They're waiting for trial. But you didn't have regime change, right? You just put the vice president in charge who was part of that dictatorial regime, right? And now, little Marco, she's still in charge. And most of the dictatorial lunatics who were not Maduro, but who were in charge then, in charge of the military, in charge of the police, in charge of the infrastructure, they're all in charge. And not only are they in charge, little Marco, they're not only in charge, but there is ample reporting of them speaking out against the United States. So what Chris Murphy said is, what the fuck's going to happen here? Is this who we get forever? So Marco's answering. And remember, I apologize for quickly clicking and unclicking. I know it can be annoying, but Marco speaks fast and he says nothing. And that's how he tries, and he sounds intelligent. And that's how he tries to get himself out of trouble. But we're not going to let him do that here at Xenocracy, my friends. Hang on. Thank you all. You guys are too much. Thank you. We're not going to let him do that here at Xenocracy. We're going to fact check him in real time, and we're going to stop him when he's speaking, because although you can't do that in real time, C-SPAN technology lets us do it here. So fuck off, Marco, but let's continue.
Precedented. I can point to a number of places, Spain, Paraguay, two examples of places in which there was a transition, from an autocratic regime to a democratic regime, and it took time. I can't give you a timeline of how long it takes.
Now we would probably have to fact check what he's talking about with Spain and Paraguay. Certainly he knows none of those senators, Chris Murphy's pretty sharp, but it's unlikely any of those senators have any idea what the fuck happened with Spain and Paraguay going from a dictatorship to a democracy. So, and if a former vice president or a ranking member of an autocratic administration in Spain or Paraguay suddenly became the leader of Spain or Paraguay. So it's just noise. Marco's making himself look intelligent. I'm sure if we looked it up and we fact-checked him, we might be able to, I'm not going to do it now, we might be able to question whether or not Spain or Paraguay matter and they're relevant. But Marco knows that he can get away with this now, except here. That's Xenocracy.
Can't take forever. It can't. It's not even been 4 weeks
Is it
since
6
Maduro
months,
was
a
reduced.
year, two
Well, I think we
years?
need to be. Let me put it to you this way: we need to be much further along 6 months from now, even 3 months from now. That may not be satisfactory to you, but I'm saying we have to be much further along 3, 4, 5 months. 3 or 4, 5 months from now cannot look like what today looks like.
So I think what Marco's sort of saying, not saying, and we'll see if Chris Murphy pushes back, that in 3 or 4 months now, if the vice president, who's now the president of Venezuela, hasn't done things differently, whatever that may be, I don't know, releasing all the fucking political prisoners or some other shit, right? Then things are going to change. But let's see. Let's let Marco continue talking. I'm sorry, Marco. I'm so sorry that I'm cutting you off, but keep talking.
And I think there's acknowledgement on both sides of that. I can probably give you a better answer, and this is not deflecting, when we finally have people on the ground like the ambassador and the team around her on a daily basis that are interacting. Because one thing is for me to pick up the phone and talk to Delcy Rodriguez 3 times a week. Another thing is to have someone on the ground on a daily basis that's following these events.
Why can't Marco go there? He's the fucking Secretary of State. Why isn't, if this is so fucking, I know Marco has 17 jobs, that he's in charge of 3,000 million agencies, right? But again, it is deflect. When he says he's not deflecting, the motherfucker is deflecting. I don't like Marco Rubio, just in case you haven't noticed, because he's so full of shit and he knows better. He's, you got these dumb, crazy fucks in the Trump administration that are like Donald, but Marco isn't like that. He's an intelligent, bright man. He could have been president of the United States. He might have even been able to beat Donald in 2016, and we wouldn't be in this fucking mess in the Republican primary if he wasn't such a candy-ass, chicken shit, whiny little biatch. But that's another story for another day. I'm feeling a little wound up today. I was like this yesterday too. I don't know. Maybe there was something in my morning tea over the last 2 days, but I'll calm down. So, but again, fuck you, Marco. Go there. Why aren't you checking in? Why don't you set up shop there for a fucking week and see what's going on if you're not bullshitting us? But you are bullshitting us, Marco. Let's continue. What do you got, Gamer Vet Dad? Hi, everybody. If you have access to Substack through your computer, through a browser, don't need the app. Amen. But the platform is more stable. Agree. Yeah, we're just on today. We just have YouTube today, I believe, and I didn't go back into TikTok. TikTok is weird right now. I'll put up a post and I'll get 0 views, which everybody's getting. But then I don't get knocked off when I'm using words like the Ice Gestapo, like doing a live. It's a weird place. Anyway, let's continue.
Is talking to civil society, but also engaging with interim authorities. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, we want to see quick progress. As you said, it's unprecedented, okay? All I'm saying to you is, before this was stagnant. Before this, we had spent 14 years, you were involved in some of those efforts, 14 years trying to change the dynamic in Venezuela. 13, 12, 11, 10. It was a big part of my career in the Senate was spent on this. This is the first time in over a decade that we see even the glimmer of an opportunity to change conditions.
Who gives a fuck? That's not what Chris Murphy asked, little Marco. You're deflecting again. I don't like Marco. You're deflecting, Marco. All we want to know is if Delcy Rodriguez is going to be there fucking forever. That's it. Let's digress, though.
A lot of that will depend on us, but a lot of that will depend on them. And it also will depend on the rest of Venezuelan society. How quickly can we get all these Venezuelans that want to go back to Venezuela and participate in civic and economic life back to Venezuela? That's going to be critical here. We recognize that. So yes, we have to be much further along in 6 months. We expect to be further along. And if we're not, I'll tell you. We'll tell you. On the third point of use of force, look, the president never ruled out.
So the third question, because I know some of you are just joining us, that Chris Murphy asked about was if Venezuela doesn't do what the village idiot wants them to do, are we going to send the military back in? Are we going to use force? So let's see.
As commander-in-chief to protect the national interest of the United States. I can tell you right now.
Oh, and Murphy also said, if you're going to use force, you need to consult with Congress. Let's see if Rubio addresses that.
Certainty, we are not postured to, nor do we intend or expect to have to take any military action in Venezuela at any time. The only military presence you'll see in Venezuela is our Marine Guards at an embassy. Okay, that is our goal, that is our expectation, and that is what everything that outlines towards.
But if you-
That said, if an Iranian drone factory pops up and threatens our forces in the region, the president retains the option to eliminate that threat.
I'm asking a more specific question because in your testimony, you suggest that you would use force to compel cooperation, for instance, with oil sales. Do you agree that you have to come to Congress to get authorization if you were simply forced to try to compel cooperation?
Well, there's two things. There's the
So again, because Marco speaks so fast and says nothing. Murphy is saying, "Look, no, stop bullshitting me. What I want to know is if the oil sales don't go the way you want, if we don't steal enough Venezuelan oil from them, and don't sell it, or they're not able to produce enough oil, or whatever the case may be, are we going to send in the military to get the oil so that we can sell it?" And by the way, whenever you see Marco drinking water, we know he's fucking lying and nervous. Always remember back. Gamer Vet Dad, you might have to keep me honest on this. I don't remember the year it was, but when Marco Rubio gave the Republican response to the State of the Union, I think it was Obama's State of the Union. And I remember when he kept drinking, he was sweating. He was a nervous fucking wreck. He was senator. He kept drinking the water. And it was just something to see. And we learned then whenever Marco is really nervous, he's drinking water. So he's got a little thing of water and he's drinking away. Take it away, Mr. Little Marco. Let's see if you can answer the senator's question about using force to get the oil.
under the War Powers Act. No, under the War Powers Act, if we're going to be involved in something that's going to put us involved in a sustained way, we have to notify you within 48 hours after the fact, and then if it's going to last longer than 60 days, we have to come to Congress with it. We don't anticipate either of these things having to happen. Everything is moving in a very different trajectory right now. On the other hand, if we tell them we don't want to see drones from Iran, as an example, pointed at the United States or threatening our forces or our presence in the region or our allies' presence in the region, and they refuse to comply with that, the president does reserve the option in self-defense to eliminate that threat. We don't see that. We don't anticipate it. But it could happen. But we hope not. We don't want.
Look at Murphy. Like, he is so fucking done with this fucking asshole. Like, look at his face. Did you see that? Look at his reactions to, like, babbling me. Murphy is a fucking ass kicker, and I hope he just rhetorically beats Marco down. He has so little tolerance. His facial expressions in Marco's face are just glorious, and Marco's feeling that because he sees that. You know, one thing I like about Chris Murphy, of many things, is early on when AOC. It was AOC, it was Jasmine Crockett, it was Ilhan Omar, and it was Senator Chris Von Hollen, and it was Senator Murphy. Shortly after January 20th, 2025, they were the ones standing up. They were putting themselves out there. I was praising them day in and day out because they had no fucks to give from the first day that idiot became president a second time. A Gamer Vet Dad, what do you got? Mitch, that was 2013, and people still use his mid-rebuttal break for comedic impact. Amen. Thank you, Gamer Vet Dad.
Happen. On the contrary, if we had to take military action, it would set us back on all these other things that we're talking about. I can tell you military action is not good for, recovery and transition. That's not what we hope to see. It's certainly not our goal here. A lot of that will depend on them. But I think it would require the emergence of an imminent threat of the kind that we do not anticipate at this time. But that's not. They get a vote on that too.
Senator Barrasso.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so now Barrasso. I don't remember what state Barrasso is from, but this is going to be the Venezuela is great. You're all great. You're so great. Can you tell us, Mr. Secretary, what greatness will be great that you and the great one have greatly done? And we'll just enjoy that blabber for a bit.
It's very great to see you. Congratulations. What you and President Trump have demonstrated in the past year is clearly peace through strength, and I appreciate the leadership from both of you. We've talked a lot about Venezuelan oil. You know, I focus a lot on energy going to China, and 3/4 of all the oil that went from Venezuela out of the country there last year, 75% of it went to China. They got it at deep discounts. They lots of money back to Venezuela through oil for loan deals. Since the start of this blockade, basically Venezuela crude shipments to China have fallen dramatically. Can you assess or talk a little bit about the impact this has on China's broader energy strategy?
Just to be clear, it's a quarantine, not a blockade. A blockade is an act of war. It's a quarantine. And
There's Rubio kind of setting himself. Oh, no, it's not a blockade. That was interesting. Barrasso told the truth that it's an act of war that has to be signed off by Congress. That was clearly an accident. And again, this is why Rubio is not a dumb fuck. He's smart, and this is what makes him even more pathetic. Is that because he's smart and he's lying? That it's a blockade is an act of war, and we'd need a fucking Congress to go along with that shit. So we're blockading, but we're not. Let's just clarify that. Sorry.
very effective in the sense that it's given us this leverage. In fact, can I just add something? And this
Sure.
might be to
Go
Senator
away,
Murphy's
Marco.
question as well. The Venezuelan authorities are now identifying ships that they want us to grab. In fact, about a week and a half ago, we grabbed one of these ships. That was because here's what happened in the aftermath of the.
By the way, we grabbed the ship because we're fucking pirates now. Arr, matey. We are pirates in the Caribbean, and we're taking them down, right? I mean, think about how ridiculous it is, right? We haven't had pirates in the Caribbean in what? 300 and some odd years, if not more, and they're back. And the U.S. Navy is now, we're pirates in the Caribbean taking ships. Tell us about it, Marco. You're a pirate if I ever saw one, Marco. Arr, matey.
Duro, about 5 ships took off without authorization from the Venezuelans because they
And
were
we went
controlled by
after
some
'em,
network
good
in
and
the
hard.
country. With the cooperation of the interim authorities, we seized one of those ships.
We took it and we
brought
took
it
all the
back into
booty.
Venezuelan waters, handed the ship off to the Venezuelans, who in turn fed it into this mechanism, this short-term mechanism that I described to you was created. So we're seeing cooperation on that front. Now, I think your question more specifically was about China. Yeah, so look, China can buy Venezuelan oil, but they're going to have to buy it like everybody else in the world is
Not
going to
the
have to
deep
buy
discounts,
it. Yeah, at the normal price, and that money is going to flow back to the benefit of the Venezuelan people in a structured way. And I know that in the short term that will involve this mechanism we've described. In the long term, our intention is that it would be governed by a democratically elected government. That, like a normal country would handle it, and it.
And that would be great, right? That would be great, but that's not what they're doing, right? They're not. That would have required regime change, right? That would have required Machado to be the president of Venezuela right now. That would have required organization beyond the military success. And again, if you and you even have to take the military success with a grain of salt. I mean, yes, we're hearing here, and mainstream media is making the point that the military was incredibly successful, but you got some good reporting on independent media that is saying no, there wasn't that, and even Midas is touching on this, that it wasn't a great military success. It was a setup. And this is not just conspiracy-like thinking. There is reason to believe that the only reason that the vice president is president of Venezuela right now is because she knew about this, right? Is because folks inside of Venezuela knew about this. Because, where else can you Venezuela is a dictatorship, but they have a significant defense capability, right? So we talk about they talk about and they brag about, and Drunken Pete Hegseth brags about it, and a lot of legacy media sort of goes along with the bragging about it, this brilliant military exercise, right? It was just so flawless. It was so incredible where they there was almost no response militarily. at the time of the attack from Venezuela, with the exception of from what we understand, the guards, the people guarding Maduro, which sounds like it was Venezuelans and Cubans, right? But there were no air defenses that were trying to take down, our military. There was the military. It almost sounds like it wasn't if you look at it from another perspective, right? That it wasn't this brilliant military, incredibly brilliant, that no other general except Trump's raging cane nut job and Admiral fucking Bradley in the Caribbean could have come up with. Only they could have come up with such a brilliant. There has never been anything in the history of warfare, right? Listening to these crazy fucks, in terms of the success and the brilliance of this fucking thing, right? Getting these two, the leader of a country and his wife, out, right, this way, right? It was unthinkable in how well it seems like, if you look at it from another perspective, that it was too easy. That maybe it wasn't that the military, no dig on the military, obviously, but maybe it wasn't that hard for the military because it wasn't that hard for the military, right? Maybe the village idiot just wanted Maduro because he wanted Maduro, just like he wanted the Nobel Peace Prize. And he just wanted to do it because he has to justify the lying that started during the 2024 campaign, that started in an apartment complex in Boulder, fucking Colorado. Remember that? The gang is there. The trade. He can't say the word, right? The gang is, there's hundreds of them. They're taking over, and they weren't. That this gang, that these Venezuelans gangs had taken over this apartment complex in Colorado, and the mayor of Boulder and the horrible, incompetent governor of Colorado, need to belong in jail because they're allowing this. And then that evolved into they're opening. They set Maduro. He sent us. He's not a good guy, that Maduro. He opened up the mental institutions. He opened up the prisons. He dumped the mental patients and the prisoners, right? So we had that narrative, that nonsensical narrative that probably started at some QAnon whack job fucking right-wing sociopath site online, that found its way through the social media echo chamber, which I'm now learning how that works, right? And found its way to the White House. And to justify that lie that the idiot still tells, right? Still tells it, they had to get Maduro. And also, they had to get Maduro because the village idiot was telling us that the fentanyl was coming. Stop the fentanyl. It's killing. And remember when they were blowing up the boats that couldn't possibly be carrying fentanyl because the fucking fentanyl doesn't come from Venezuela? There might have been drug boats that were carrying cocaine. Sure. There might have been, and some of those boats were likely not drug boats. They were fishermen. Or we've learned from reporting on the ground from the Associated Press that a lot of those fishermen don't make any money. They can't make a living fishing. So they work for the cartels. And they take their boats and they try to run these drugs for the cartels. And the cartels don't give a fuck if they get blown up or not, because it's not them. It's these poor fishermen who they just decide, who just do the jobs and get a little bit more money than they get fucking fishing, right? So they had to justify blowing up all the boats. They had to justify murdering two either fishermen or cartel people who were injured, who were on the top of an overturned boat. And the order was given most likely by Pete Hegseth and subsequently by Admiral Bradley, even though Bradley says that Hegseth had nothing to do with it, right? Which I don't believe him. I think he's lying for Hegseth, but that's just my opinion. And they shot those two people. They didn't shoot them. They fucking blew those two people up. Don't shoot. We're on the top of a boat that's overturned and we're injured. Fire. Boom. That we had to do it because they were going to turn the boat over. And they were going to signal. They were signaling like this to other cartel members up in the air How the fuck were the cartel members going to be up in the air in what, a fucking helicopter or like a private jet while we have F-35 fighter planes all over the fucking place, Predator drones blowing shit? Fuck off. We have the entire naval fleet or a lot of it, right? Come on. So they've got to justify that bullshit, right? And this is what we're hearing now. I know that's not specifically what they're talking about, but let's get back to Rubio in China, shall we? Gamer Vet Dad. During the 2016 Republican primary debates, Trump referred to Senator Marco as Little Marco Rubio.
Not just about oil. There's other economic activity, the full spectrum. I mean, Venezuela was, and still, we're not talking about some third world country here. I mean, we're talking about a country that doesn't just have wealth, it has...
No. We are literally talking about some third world country. Venezuela was a developing country before Maduro and Chavez fucked it up, right? But it is some third world country.
It has history of economic activity, of people who own chains of pharmacies. I know some of these people, of people who own chains of retail stores.
He's right, it wasn't always a third world country. So I'll give Marco that.
American retailers who had a presence there. We just want it to be a normal, prosperous country again, not a playground for Iran, Russia, and China in our own hemisphere.
No, you want to cover your ass because Donald wanted Venezuela to cover a lie. Fuck off, Marco, but continue. I can't really let the guy talk. I just got to shut my mouth for 5 minutes. We'll try, my friends.
And we're going to try to help them get that because we think it serves our national interest. That will require actions on our part, not money, but ultimately that will require them. This is ultimately going to be on the Venezuelan people and Venezuelan society and Venezuelan leaders to make this happen. We're going to be there to help and assist and create the parameters for it, and we feel like we're making really good progress. If we make as much progress over the next 4 weeks as we've made in the last 3.5 weeks, I'll feel very good about that. If it slows down or it gets complicated, I'll certainly let you know. But our anticipation is that we're going to be able to continue to work cooperatively with them because it's in their interest and ours. But I will point out to this. After this operation happened, look at the people who criticized it. I mean, there were others. China, Russia, Iran, Hamas. These were the people that were upset about this strike and this raid.
What about the Americans? What about me? What about you? What about Senator Chris Murphy? What about Senator Chris Von Halen? What about all media news outlets, pro-democracy news outlets? What about independent media? What about military experts, former generals, all the people that criticize? It's not just Iran, China, right, that criticized this. What about our fucking allies? What about the British who stopped sharing intel with U.S. U.S. military or U.S. intelligence services because we kept fucking blowing up boats? What about that? Oh, great. Thanks, Miss Patty Ann. Thank you. Sounds great. I look forward to hearing you from you. Have a good rest of the day. But what about them, Marco? But let's continue with Marco's slick, fast-talking bullshit babble.
And what we did. And I can tell you that in many countries in the Western Hemisphere, there was great pleasure in the fact that Maduro was removed and that it didn't involve all that war and an invasion.
Since you mentioned Iran, and Senator McCormick mentioned Iran as well, a lot of oil is still going from Iran to China. 1 million barrels a day last year. Lots of that money goes back to Iran, to the dictators, the people that are actually killing others on the street. Can you talk a little bit about what we can do to prevent that from continuing to go and what we're doing to support the Iranian?
Some of that is sanctioned oil. This requires the willingness to enforce those sanctions. And obviously that comes with a cost-benefit analysis. The Iranians are also capable of seizing ships and doing that in retribution. But that's certainly something that will be under consideration, and others have done that in the past. And we have seized, for example, weapons shipments in the past that involve Iranian excuse. And in fact, some of the ships, remember, all of these ships that we're seizing with the oil are with court orders. They're either one of two things. We either have a court order from a federal judge that allows us to seize it because it's in violation of a sanction, or it's a flagless vessel in the shadow fleet. And many of these ships here involve Iran. And some of that oil was going to be ultimately transferred to the excess refining capacity that China currently has.
As you mentioned the word shadow fleet, Senator Shaheen and I have legislation on subsea cables. I've asked you about that the last time we were here. The sabotage being done, directly being targeted. I know that Sweden and Finland have both detained Russian ships along those lines. We're going to have a markup on that bill tomorrow. Is that something you continue to support our efforts to go after?
It is, and it's featured prominently in the agenda, both at the G7 this year, as it did somewhat last year. But again,
I mean, this
year
is
in the G7
relatively
will be
like
one
a
of the top
normal
items we'll be discussing.
thing. This
And we've
part,
also been
this
pushing
this
it
part of the
as a
conversation about
priority
the
for NATO to consider. The two new things we want
Russian
NATO to make a
sabotage on
priority
the
this year in our
undersea cables.
conversations are the undersea cable infrastructure and Arctic security, and the third is critical minerals and supply chains. Because ultimately, you can spend all the money in the world on weapons if you can't make them.
But
because
it's a
you're missing
distraction.
Some chip that requires some mineral
because this
that
is
China
this is
controls.
about
You're in a lot of trouble.
hammering
Thank you, Mr.
Rubio
Chairman.
on Venezuela.
Senator King. Thank you. We started this operation on September 2nd with the attack on Venezuelans and boats in open waters. And now we are nearly 5 months in. Next week is 5 months. Finally, a public hearing. Wow, how novel. Finally, a
Tim
public
Kaine, by the
hearing
way,
in
but
the
we'll see.
Senate or House. This is the
not been on
first
my
public
favorite
hearing
senators
we've
list
had.
lately, but let's see what he does.
200 folks who are on secret designated combatant lists have been killed. U.S. troops have been injured. Hundreds of millions of
Kaine
dollars
does
have been
need a new
spent on
hairstylist.
Armada
I'm going to say
amassed.
that. I've noticed
The
this several
announcement
times.
of the new Monroe Doctrine, which does not land well in the Americas, Democrats have been asking over and over again, can we have a public hearing? Can we share what we know with the American public? Finally, a public hearing. But even that hearing is constrained. I'd like to talk about the complete weakness of the legal rationale about the strikes on boats in international waters, but I can't because the administration has only shared it with members in a classified setting. I can't tell you why the domestic rationale is hollow and the international rationale is hollow. I can't tell you why the rationale for attacking Venezuela is hollow because, again, the rationale has been shared with us in a closed setting. I can't share with you the grim details of the murder of shipwrecked survivors in open waters that we all know because we've seen the videos and we've questioned the U.S. military officials involved about legality because the administration will not release that publicly. They released the boat strike videos publicly, but they hid the second strike that killed
Kaine is
struggling shipwrecked
saying things that
survivors,
matter.
even from Congress, for nearly 3 months, but I can't really talk to you about it. I can't talk to you about the weakness of the targeting criteria being used to attack boats in the Caribbean and Pacific. I would encourage any colleague, if you have not, go to the classified setting and ask for a briefing on each strike and ask this question: what was the evidence that there were narcotics on that craft? You will be very surprised if you ask that question about every strike. And so even in this first public hearing, 5 months in, there's a lot we can't talk about. If it was such a righteous operation, why is the administration and the majority in this Senate so jealously protecting the details about it from being revealed to the American public? I have Virginians deployed in this operation. I can't answer their families' questions. Thank God we're having a public hearing 5 months in. This is supposed to be the greatest deliberative body in the world. Mr. Secretary, who won the July 2024 Venezuelan presidential election?
Oh, I think the whole world would acknowledge it was Mundo Gonzalez.
Who lost that election?
Maduro.
And his vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. Now, you have made the decision, the administration has made the decision in the aftermath of the attack that
Look at
Delcy
Rubio's
Rodriguez
discomfort,
should be
when
leading the
he
country.
knows he's
Let
full
me
of shit.
read something that President Trump said about her on January 14 about Delcy Rodriguez, who lost the election with Maduro. We just had a great conversation today, and she's a terrific person. I mean, she's somebody that we have worked with very well. Let me tell you what Delcy Rodriguez said the day after Venezuela was attacked.
Now, I do. Let's listen. I do want to listen to Tim Kaine. He's actually doing well now. I was complaining about it, but he's on fire right now. But let's focus also on Rubio's affect. He's so bad because he has a conscience still. So his indecency. He can't hide his discomfort with his own indecency. He's a broken shell of a man that is just an avatar for the village idiot, Donald Trump, but he hasn't completely surrendered his intellect or his conscience. So I love this split screen right now. And as Kane kind of, pushes at him here, and again, I hadn't seen this before. So it's live, but we're a little bit behind because I keep stopping the video. But it's still going on. But let's watch Rubio's affect as Kane hammers him with the hypocrisy, the inconsistencies, the village idiots babbling bullshit words. I think it's going to be very telling.
Governments around the world are simply shocked that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is the victim and target of an attack of this nature, which undoubtedly has Zionist undertones. What the hell did Delcy Rodriguez mean when she said this attack had Zionist undertones? I'm assuming you have no idea.
Oh, I have an idea what she meant. I mean, what's the question?
What does she mean when she says this attack has Zionist undertones?
Look, I'd have to answer, but let me understand in a broader context. No one here is telling you that this is what we want to see in the long term.
Okay.
This is not a campaign.
Shut the fuck up, Marco.
The system that's currently in place.
Let me switch.
But we either have but I mean the criticism of us is
No, shut up, big ears. Just listen.
I'm ready to switch now to talk about somebody that you
thought
know
you raised
well.
an important point. If I can get back to it, I will.
Fuck off,
you know
Marco.
well and you respect well Maria Corina Machado. Here's what President Trump said about her. Won the Nobel Prize in the aftermath of the attack on Venezuela. I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect. What did President Trump mean by that?
Yeah. First of all, I've known Maria Corina for probably 12 years, 13
have.
years. Have dealt with her probably more than anybody, as much as anybody on this committee has for certain. And I'll be meeting with her today, in fact. And we met with her a couple weeks ago. So here's the reality, though, and I think what the president was pointing to. And I think Maria Corina would acknowledge this.
The only way I talked to her last week.
Well,
She's very disappointed in those comments, and so are Venezuelans in my state.
Okay, well, she didn't share that with me or with us, but I would sell this to you. The president is acknowledging is that today, as it stands, whether we like it or not, the elements of control in that country, the people with the guns, the people that control the guns and the institutions of government there, are in the hands of this regime. So we either, on the one hand, we're getting criticized. Some people are saying we don't want regime change. On the other hand, we're being criticized for not.
No, Marco, that's not the question.
What we're trying to trigger here is a process of stabilization, recovery, and transition to something where Maria Corina and others can be a part of.
You have respect for her, don't you?
Sure.
Okay, great. My last question is this.
And so does the president, by the way. He met with her. They had a great meeting. And he actually he spoke to her last week in my presence.
Here's what he said after that meeting. We're talking to her, and maybe we can get her involved in some way. I'd love to be able to do that. Maybe we can do that. We'll set the terms for this Nobel Prize winner having a leadership role. Last question is this. You talked about the speech in Davos. Here's something the president said in Davos. I'm helping NATO until the last few days. When I told them about Iceland, they loved me. They're not here for us on Iceland, that I can tell you. Our stock market took the first dip yesterday because of Iceland, so Iceland has already cost us a lot of money. President repeatedly mistook Iceland for Greenland, right? We're not mad at Iceland. They haven't cost us any money. The president just mistook the two countries for each other, correct?
Yeah, he meant to say Greenland, but I think we're all familiar with presidents that have verbal stumbles. We've had presidents like that before. Some made a lot more than this one.
Nice try. Thanks. All right.
Thank you. Yeah. He did well.
that about sums it up.
We got Senator Paul.
This is Rand Paul might be a good. We'll wrap it after Rand Paul. We'll go on to some other topics.
To declare or initiate war. Virtually unanimously, they decided, and what was entered into the Constitution was that the declaration or initiation of war would be the power of Congress. Now, we have many advocates, many of whom are here today, who have been advocates for an expansive notion of presidential power. They often argue that wars are not really wars, that they're kinetic actions or drug busts. I think, though, if you reverse the circumstances, it becomes very difficult for these arguments to hold up. So I would ask you, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
Well, I think your question is about and I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career.
Just answer the question, Marco.
Let me, no matter who's in charge. So I will point to two things. The first is it's hard for us to conceive that an operation that lasted about 4.5 hours and was a law enforcement operation to capture someone we don't recognize as a head of state, indicted in the United States, wanted with a $50 million
my
bounty.
question would be, if it only took 4 hours to take our president, it's very short, nobody dies on the other side, nobody dies on our side, it's perfect. Would it be an act of war?
We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere.
Yeah, Marco, he cannot answer that, this question. Would it be an act of war, Marco? And he can't deflect, because the problem Marco Rubio has, again, is he's got a conscience that's still kind of left in there. And it's a little bit harder, I think, for him to lie. He does it all the time, but I think it's breaking him. But let's listen to him fumble and wobble here.
Close to the constitutional definition of
But
war.
would it be an act of war if someone did it to us? Nobody dies, few casualties, they're in and out. Boom, it's a perfect military operation. Would that be an act of war? Of course it would be an act of war.
He should have let Marco have to answer it.
Anti-war person in the Senate, and I would vote to declare war if someone invaded our country and took our president. So I think we need to at least acknowledge this is a one-way argument. One-way arguments that don't rebound, that you can't apply to yourselves, that cannot be universally applicable, are bad arguments. So my next question would be, let's say it's not a war. And we're just going to define it away and say it's not a war. That's one of the arguments. So it's a drug bust. What if a foreign country indicts our president for violating a foreign law? Should we extradite our president, or should we be okay if they come in and get him by force?
Look, I think ultimately we're always going to act in our national interest. And so if somebody comes after our national interest, like the case you've described, which obviously does not exist at this time, but the case you've described, the U.S. always has the right to act in its national interest and to protect itself.
So really
I don't know about this equivalency. Well, does this justify them doing it? We're always going to do what's best for the United States and America. We're always going to protect our system.
But the point isn't.
This moment with Rand Paul is disastrous for Rubio right now. This is, I think we're watching in real time. I mean, we're a little behind on this in real time, but I think you're watching all the news clips now. They won't show this on Fox News, but I think these clips are going to be the headlines, whatever can break through, because ICE is rightfully, and Kristi Noem, pressure on her to resign and her fight and her potential fight with Stephen Miller. That's kind of the news. But if anything breaks through that can break through, I think it's going to be this, unless there's something bigger that happens later.
And you're exactly right. We will act in our national interest, and we should. So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. What I'm saying is, though, that our arguments are empty then. The drug bust isn't really an argument. It's a ruse. The war argument, not a war, is a ruse. It's not a real argument. And we do what we do because we have the force, we have the might. We do it because it's in our interest. So we wouldn't let anybody come in, bomb us, blockade us, and take our president. We've had arguments about legitimate, illegitimate presidents, bad elections, rigged elections. So there's all kinds of same arguments that we've had in our country that they've had in Venezuela. But we wouldn't argue for an indictment. And these things aren't idle speculation. I mean, Netanyahu's been indicted by the ICC. And one of the reasons I object to being part of the ICC, and I would say you and the administration probably agree, is we're not going to let any international council indict our president and arrest him somewhere on foreign soil. We're not going to do that. We actually, most of us probably object to indicting Netanyahu in that way as well. So I think the arguments are valid. So we did get the legal opinion that Senator Kaine referred to, the OLC opinion, Office of Legal Counsel. And I think a lot of it's been released. Plus, they came to our caucus and talked most of it open about everything they had classified. So I will talk about at least one of the arguments. They say this war wasn't a constitutional war. Therefore, it doesn't rise to the constitutional notion of us declaring or having to initiate the war. It just doesn't rise. And one of their main arguments was not enough people died. And so there is some number that they aren't specific.
We're going to get back to him in a second, but some people may not know that the whole reason that this is an issue is because if it's a act of war, Congress has to be consulted. A president can just not just start a war and go to war without permission from Congress.
Some number, I would assume although I'm not positive, but the 50, 60,000 soldiers who died in Vietnam might be enough for them to call that a war. But here's the problem. It isn't the number, it's that it happens in retrospect. See, our founders gave us the power to initiate or declare war. They didn't give us other powers to execute the war. Those are left to the president. But if we have to wait to see how many people are killed, we have to wait, as they describe it, as the scope, nature, and extent. If we have to wait to see the scope, nature, and extent, the war has been going on for some time. It's hard to vote to initiate a war that's been going on. And we can say this war is over, but we're still blockading it, and we may go back in. But there are no clear answers. You know, we put 2,000, we leave 2,000 troops in. Are we going to call that war and initiate it? So the definition of war is very important. And I think we have to acknowledge the problems with our argument. Calling things kinetic action is a disservice to our soldiers. You weren't really wounded in war. You don't have a Medal of Honor for war. You have a Medal of Honor for a kinetic action. So I think let's call it what it is, and let's vote on these things. But I think we're in violation of both the spirit and the law of the Constitution by bombing a capital, blockading a country, and removing elected officials. And we certainly wouldn't tolerate it, nor would I if someone did it to us.
Well, we didn't remove an elected official. We removed someone who was not elected, and it was actually an indicted drug trafficker in the United States. And their system...
Our laws, indicted under our laws. Look, Bolsonaro says that Da Silva is not really the president of Brazil. Our president said Biden wasn't really the president. Hillary Clinton said in 2016 Trump wasn't the president. So you have these arguments, and I agree with you. It probably was, and most likely was, most assuredly was a bad election. He wasn't really elected. But at the same time, if that's our predicate, and you don't have to come to us because it's a drug bust, we're just removing somebody, you can see where it leads to.
We could go anywhere
It leads to
and take over any country.
Chaos.
Agreed.
And that's why we have rules like the Constitution, so we don't
fuck
get
off, Marco.
so far out there
Little
that presidents
Marco
can do whatever they want. It is this check and balance. And I would argue for 70 years we've been going the wrong way. It isn't just this president, but it's a debate that I think is worth having.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to associate myself with the comments of Tim Kaine.
I just want to see who's speaking
now. 5
now.
months into this, and this is the first oversight hearing, is really a complete failure of the responsibility of Congress, failure of this committee to demand oversight, but also a reflection of the reluctance of the administration to engage in the proper consultation with Congress. So I hope we can do a lot better going forward, and that we'll see you at least every 6 weeks or so, not every five months. I also feel like the strategy of keeping basically these very weak arguments secret so that they can't be discussed openly for the legal justification. I've gone down and read
If
them,
Merkley
and
doesn't really go anywhere with this, I'm going to kind of just wrap the
so make them public. Let's have an actual
just kind of wrap
transparency here in the United States
this part of the
of
live.
America. And let's
If he goes
be clear
somewhere,
about
we'll
what has
pay
gone
attention.
on.
But let's just
We
see
had
where
a
he goes.
dictator we didn't like. We've replaced it with a dictator we think we can manipulate. And if that doesn't work, we'll do something else in order to pry open that economy for oil. And I must say that you did say something I liked. So let me emphasize that.
I'm making progress.
Yeah. You said no U.S. taxpayer dollars will be used, no spending on our part, to kind of prop up Venezuela. Can you restate your commitment to that?
Yeah, they're not going to need it. For example, we're not spending money in Venezuela right now. I mean, obviously, look, I think you're putting aside.
How are we not spending? We have thousands of troops there. We have boats. All this is free. We have boats there. We have drones there. We have his fucking salary. What is he talking about? Like, we're not spending money in Venezuela. Of course, we're spending money in Venezuela.
The operations and all of that. And by the way, there may be some program through foreign aid that some of you might be interested in the future. We don't think that Venezuela is the kind of country that needs that. This is a very wealthy country.
Thank you. I'm glad you restated that, because I think that we will see some moment when the administration says, let's subsidize our American oil companies to rebuild the infrastructure in
Trump already said that. Trump already said that the U.S. oil that when he was trying to pressure the oil companies to go into Venezuela, the village idiot already said something along the lines. He was giving a speech of some kind, and he had said something like, "They're gonna go in, they're gonna They're gonna fix it all up. We're gonna reimburse them. They're gonna get the money, but they're gonna have to put out the money. I mean, he said it, right? But let's continue.
Venezuela, and I must say that's a very unpopular idea among my constituents. I think America needs a lot of investments in infrastructure here, and I think you have a way too rosy sense of the oil economy there. Many experts have said, look,
Yes.
without 10-year prospect horizon of stability, without Canada deciding to ship a lot more of its heavy oil from instead of to the Gulf, doing it to Asia so that we prop up the kind of demand in the Gulf, without keeping Iran off the international stage so that the cost of oil, the value is higher. All of those factors would have to be there for our oil companies to want to invest their own money.
And how would you keep Iran off of the international stage? You would continue to sanction them. If you wonder maybe why the village idiot didn't go, promise the Iranian protesters, go, keep protesting. We've got you back. We're going to take care of you. And then they did, and thousands died thanks to him. Maybe that's one of the reasons why. If Iran were to have regime change in any capacity, oil is the biggest industry in Iran. If Iranian oil starts flowing again, the price of oil, we already have too much oil in the market right now. It has nothing to do with the village idiot Donald Trump. That's why gas prices are going down at the tank at the moment. So if Iran is back on the international stage in any capacity, it's going to lower the price of oil, which is subsequently going to make this very difficult to refine oil coming out of Venezuela cheaper, right? Because it's not as desirable and countries aren't going to need it as much.
I think they'll be coming to the administration. I think you'll all be trying to find some way to subsidize them. But I'm glad what you said today, that you're not going to do it, and I want to hold the administration accountable to that. Second, on terms of the $500 million fund, $300 million, my understanding, has gone back to the Central Bank of Venezuela, and they have.
This, by the way, is the bank account that's being held in Qatar. That really is just, from all the reporting I've seen, it's just a bank account that Trump controls. I mean, whether it's Trump's personal account or whether it's some sort of government account, I haven't seen any reporting on, but it's just an account where the Venezuelan oil money goes into that, and Donald gets to do what he wants with it in Qatar. And the reasoning for that from the administration was, well, if it's here in the U.S., then people who Venezuela owes money to can get a hold of it. But if it's in Qatar, they can't, which is such fucking bullshit. Like, it's here, right? And we do have courts and laws, and people could probably sue, countries could sue that Venezuela owes money to try to get the money, but they don't. I'm sure the administration could do something. They break the law anyway, ignore the courts anyway. I'm sure there is a way that they could freeze those dollars within the United States. It's just that it's in Qatar for some other reason, right?
Actually exchanged it for bolivars to key industry players. I don't think we have any transparency on what corporations or entities got that hard currency.
Yes.
And yet you did say there's going to be a lot of transparency. You also...
And how much of that currency directly is going to Donald Trump indirectly? Is his two goofball sons somehow involved in a company that is somehow involved in having access to those funds? I'd be curious.
If I understood right, that those funds are eventually going to be brought back into the structure of U.S. control as part of our, formal structure of funds. And in that sense, the Constitution says no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made in law. So are you going to make sure that if that money comes back into kind of full U.S. control, not an offshore account the way it is now, that we're going to abide by the Constitution? Third point here is that one of the things that transpired is cutting off the oil to Cuba. and I know you have a strong interest in making life difficult for the leadership in Cuba. Can you lay out for us what other things you might be planning in that regard and how those fit into an overall plan?
Yeah, well, I'll try to do that in a minute. Let me just say on the rosy projections of oil, it's not rosy projection. I mean, it's either going to happen or it's not. In essence, oil, there's no world in which the United States is subsidizing investment in Venezuelan oil. It's very simple. Oil company will go in and...
No. That's exactly. Donald Trump says things, and then Rubio tells us that what we heard, and the way he says it, it's absolutely ridiculous that the U.S. is going to subsidize anything in Venezuela. It's absolutely ridiculous. That was never the plan. I mean, it's insane. It's completely ridiculous. You're fucking out of your mind. But literally, the village idiot said that was going to happen. What we heard wasn't what we heard. What we saw wasn't what we saw.
Okay, this is the oil you have. This is how much it's going to cost us investing on the front end to one end make money, pay back our investment plus a profit at the back end. And then depending on the terms of that investment, they'll make a decision about whether it makes sense for that or not. Right now, what you have in Venezuela is a corrupt and broken oil company run by the government that basically takes this money, doesn't reinvest in it at all, and basically sprinkles it to its people to keep the glue that keeps the regime together. We want it to become a normal oil economy. That's what the ultimate goal is here. And in a normal oil economy, companies are going to go in, they're going to look at Venezuelan law, they're going to look at Venezuelan authorities, and they're going to make a determination about whether or not it's worth their investment. And that's the normalization process that we're talking about. That's going to be up to them if they want to have a normal oil economy as opposed to one that is basically used as a way to feed graft in a very inefficient way, but they didn't care about that. If they do it the right way, we think it has great promise and potential over the long term, especially because these investments take a long time. But the U.S. doesn't have to put any money to encourage companies to go in and invest, nor is there any interest in doing so. But a lot of it...
That's a point I really do appreciate.
Yeah, no,
I don't want to see...
Well, I don't even think that's even been... I don't think that's even been discussed or considered by anybody. Your second
Someone
point
should ask
was-
him if
wrote
you
it
always
here, but
need
now-
to correct
It's
the
the,
president's
300
statements.
million
Why don't you just be
distributed
president?
corporations
Amen.
in Venezuela and
The second one was what, I'm sorry?
lack of accountability over that. The 300
Oh,
million
yeah.
has already been distributed.
On the account. So that's not the permanent structure we want to see. In the long term, we just want them to have a normal industry where the companies are involved in it, they're selling it directly to the market, and we're out of that game. What we're talking about now is the sanctioned oil, the oil that's under our sanction. So we have to monitor how that money moves. So yes, the first 300 million moved for the following reason. We would all agree we didn't want to see systemic collapse. Like one of the things a lot
There
of you
was
told me
no
were worried about on the short term is
systemic
this is going to
collapse.
trigger internal chaos in Venezuela.
There was
A million
no
people are gonna
internal
storm
chaos. There
the
was a
border with Colombia.
dictatorship.
Colombia
It was
even stood up
horrible.
troops to their border to prevent it.
But there
Brazil
was no
worried
systemic
about it
collapse.
as well.
That is an
It's going to lead
invented
to
bunch of
fighting in the
bullshit.
streets between rival
Yeah,
factions and
shut
shooting.
the fuck
None
up.
of
I can't listen to him anymore. I can't take it anymore, guys. I just, it becomes, it becomes sometimes hard to hear Marco just lie excessively and nonstop. So I can't. I just can't. I think I want to just take a moment. I've got to wrap the live in a few moments because we've got our daily briefing soon with Chorus. But, yesterday, I think you guys probably saw, those of you who were there for the live yesterday, that I was a little wired, right? I was a little jacked up. And I think if you remember toward the end of the live, one of the MAGA folks on TikTok had really challenged me, right? They didn't know that they challenged me, but sort of called me out on my knowledge or my ability to ascertain whether ICE was behaving like a Gestapo, and I kind of lost my shit, right? And as I've thought about, because whenever I lose my shit, ever since I've been as I get older, and as my wife and I practice these different wellness things, and I'm always trying to be a better human being. I'm always trying to be a little less of a dick than I was the day before. I don't achieve that much, but I work on it. It's a journey, right? But I always kind of ask myself, like, after I sort of come down off of, I wouldn't say yesterday I don't feel like it was inappropriate or if it was bad behavior, and I didn't really insult the person, which as much as I could have gotten far more aggressive and really kind of hammered that person. And I rhetorically, and I wanted to, but I opted. And it's a safe place when I'm behind the camera and they're just a name on a screen and they're not here to yell back at me, right? But irrespective, I think about it. I try to sort of think about it and wonder, like, why was I so? And it was a little edgy throughout the live yesterday as well. And I realized it was because the live in politics. That's my politics space. It's where I don't joke around when I say it really is group therapy. It's where I release a lot of shit, right? And I think part of it was part of my over the last 2 days, that feistiness that I was experiencing. And the emotion that I was having, I think there was a lot of PTSD left over from the shooting, right? The 2 shootings, right? And the murders. And there was another shooting yesterday that the media didn't even cover in Arizona, right? Someone's in critical condition. We know absolutely nothing about that person because DHS is covering that up, and the media isn't challenging them and going after it and finding out about it. It's not taking off because we don't have a murder in real time recorded on video. But I think still, as human beings, because we are not indecent like the MAGA community has become, and we are not Marco Rubio, where we haven't sold our souls and our decencies and our humanity to an animal, right? Because of those things, we feel. And I think part of my frustration coming out yesterday was left over from the sadness, the pain, the frustration. We shouldn't see that, right? We shouldn't see it's bad enough that we see murder by the government on video in other places, right? It shouldn't happen, right? We shouldn't see murder by our own government, assassination, by a Gestapo of citizens in real time, but we are, and that affects us. And anyway, the whole reason I am kind of bringing this up now, other than to kind of comment on it in reference to yesterday, is I haven't asked you guys in a while how you are, and I know it's kind of a hard conversation to have, me talking and you guys typing, so you don't even have to respond. You don't even have to respond by in the live chat if you're not feeling it. And again, Patty Ann and I and my wife, we're coordinating a wellness live where I'm going to let them, hopefully really let them sort of take over and help a little bit more so than I ever could. We're still kind of working out the details of that, but I do want to ask you guys, even if it's just something that you think about for yourselves, is how are you after all this? Are you okay? And what got me thinking about all this was yesterday, I had a one-on-one meeting. Meg Roach, struggling with humanity. My dad is MAGA, and it's the most disorienting thing to me. I'm sorry about that, Meg Roach. I don't know. I can't even imagine how incredibly difficult that is when someone you love is in the cult, and it's unbreakable, and like your dad, someone who, and I don't know your story, but for so many of us, like that's someone who taught us to be the people that we are, right? And if the people who we learned our values from, if a person that we've learned our values from has lost theirs, I don't know how you process that, right? I mean, I can imagine it's one thing too. You hear, when cults, we're talking about cults, right? And Yeah, especially since they raised you to be so compassionate. And that's what I can't even imagine. When you think about the typical story about a cult, right? It's so frequently parents trying to get their adult children, or their teenage children out of a cult, right? Even with the sort of Nazi-like thinking right now, we hear so much about parents trying to get their young white sons, out of this twisted ideology that they've developed and been exposed to online. But the reverse has got to be even weirder, right? Because when you have a parent who raised you, um, and taught you to be kind and compassionate, and are now swept up in this madness, um, where inhumanity is the requirement. Stupidity, intentional stupidity from intelligent people, is a requirement. Self-victimization, where it's everybody else's fault. Whatever's wrong in your life right now, it's everybody else's fault, especially people who are brown. So you could shoot them, or the people who are trying to protect the people who are brown, right? You can shoot them at point blank range in the middle of the street and not go to jail, right? And that's okay, because they should have been following orders, right? Meg wrote, it's Fox News 100. They just won't change the channel. To hear his hate for immigrants absolutely kills me. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I can't even, and what do? You're not going to disengage from your parents, right? I just don't give up, just this'll, we've seen the fever break in people, right? And we've seen lots of people get a red line, and sometimes the fever breaks when they feel the pain, because Trump's going to hurt everybody, even the MAGA folks. And then sometimes a lot of the MAGA folks break when it finally hurts them, when their self-centeredness and their self-interest they get smacked in the face by Trump. And maybe for your dad, it'll take that. But I hate that so many families have been torn apart, and I applaud you and I honor you for caring. And I honor you for just saying, fuck them, I'm done. Because it's harder to stay in it, right? It's harder to stay in it, and it's got to be. I know it's got to be breaking you, but good for you for trying, and keep doing it. Just stay in it, and at least you'll know that if he never changes, you'll never question, you'll never feel like you walked away. You'll never feel like politics tore you away from your family, even if it tore one of your loved ones away from his sense of decency. And you'll always know that you gave it everything. And there will be a moment, when politics just doesn't matter, and his politics and his inhumanity, all that won't matter. There's always that moment. Something happens, somebody gets sick, not saying him, but somebody else in the family. The family's got to come together, whatever. There's always some reason. There's always a moment in every family when all of it just stops mattering for some reason. And that's, I think, sometimes when change happens, when we're reminded, when something breaks the fever because it's bigger than the fever, and we're reminded that there's bigger stuff. So just hang in there. I told him I will fight to get him out of the cult, to one of our last breaths. Well, good for you. I mean, that's, and I think we can all, at least I know I can, be inspired by that, because, I want to tell them all to go fuck themselves. Right? Yesterday, I held back, and I wanted to just tear into that guy I don't know if it's a guy, but that person yesterday on social, on TikTok. And, we talked a couple days ago about my son has a friend, right, who their dad is a MAGA person. I don't even talk to him anymore. He's a nice guy. I used to talk to him, but I'm going to make an effort to talk to him because we can't, as awful as it is, good is winning, first of all. We're going to get through this. And, we've got to find a way to live together. So we can't just tell them all to go fuck themselves and never have anything to do with them again, right? So the fact that you're fighting to save your dad, and be able to reconnect with him, where it really matters. Like, it doesn't really matter if I never talk to my son's friend's dad again, but it matters sort of the big picture. And with the fact that you can do this, you can stand up and you can kind of fight for your family. The rest of us can fight for, to kind of try to be civil with the MAGA people in our lives that don't really, where it doesn't matter, be for the sake of, I don't know, the future. So, I honor you for what you're doing, and you're struggling also at this time. I get it. I get it, and just whatever your struggle is, chunk through it. If you can, that's why I end every live with 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 live at a time. As a tool for life, like chunking is it just how I get through, right? And you can, don't feel like you're not a patriot, and we can take that word back from the MAGA cult people, or don't feel like you're not, like you're letting down Alex or Renee who died to save America, right? Or don't feel like you're letting your family or the country down if you walk away for a day. There's plenty of us to hold the line. Plenty of us. It's the old idea that, they get very practical in an airplane, right? They don't fuck around. Like, they're like, put your mask on before you put your kid's mask on, if the masks come down, right, from the ceiling. Because if you fucking pass out, and you have a kid that doesn't know what to do, you both don't survive, right? So put your mask on and then put your kid's mask on. And I think, you can apply that practicality to this moment in politics. It's so hard and we're so broken. The whole fucking country needs therapy. Now and after this is over with. We all have PTSD. We've all seen too much. We've all heard too much. We've all felt too much. So you gotta just walk away when you need to walk away, and you gotta re-energize and find your energy, and then step back in the game. And you have to. So I just want to kind of wrap up the live with that. And even if you didn't really, have anything to share, or you didn't want to share, like we're here. I know you guys are talking about it in the chat too now, as well. We're here. This community is small but mighty, and it's a place, and we're here. Our DMs are any of us. I don't want to volunteer everybody, but certainly me, and my DMs are open. If you need to just rant, talk, whatever. My wife, like I said, is a therapist, and she's here. If somebody's really, really struggling. I don't know if she's so overwhelmed right now with work in the hospital and work with our other company, Zenevive, that she can't do therapy. She just does. There isn't a minute to do it, but I always have access to, just an incredible spirit and healer and soul. And if there's something where you're broken, and you need to hear what both a mental health professional and a deeply spiritual healer has to say about it, we're here, and she'll, even if it's through DMs or something, she's here to share that. So that this is the Zen part of Zenocracy, right? This is not. There's the saving democracy, and there's the saving your fucking, your mind and your spirit and your sanity through this. So I just wanted, and the reason, again, the one of the reasons that it was realizing after I yelled at that guy yesterday, but also I got to leave in just a couple minutes because we have our chorus briefing in a few minutes. But, like when we had a one-on-one, I had a check-in yesterday with, some of the team from Chorus, from the pro-democracy community. And it was our first one-on-ones. And I thought they were just going to be talking about, well, what do you want to do? We know what your social media, but where do you need help? And we did. But the very first thing the representative said to me was, "Are you okay?" She's like, because we're in this 24/7, and I just, it just, my heart melted when the very first thing that this, maybe she's 25 years old, right? And it was, "Are you okay?" We need to know that everybody in the team is okay. And that, I melted. I couldn't believe how caring that moment was. And it really just, it really just stuck with me. It was such a gesture of kindness. And I mean, look, they're training me. They're paying me, right? And they're asking if I'm okay. So I felt like I needed to come out here today and pay that forward and ask if you're okay. So I wanted to do that. And I love you guys, and thank you for that. Yes, thank you, Aggie. Thank you. All right, guys, I got to wrap right now. If you, and again, for reals, if you guys need to talk offline, just DM me. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. Keep chunking, keep driving. We're over a year. I know there's 3 more of them, but we're over a year in, and we just got to keep going. I'll be posting on all the socials throughout the day today, and if I can squeeze another live in later. For those who missed this live, I'll, as soon as I can, I'll upload this as well. I'll see you soon, guys. Be well, everybody, and take care. Thank you again.